Hello, everyone. Sorry for the confusion. My name is Charles Feiner, and this session is strategies to finding great schools and cutting their costs. I bring over 23 years of experience in colleges and universities. I was responsible for orientation as well as first-year student engagement. After that, I worked in colleges, in high schools for 15 years as a high school guidance counselor. Most importantly, is I am the father of 2 daughters, and we have gone through the entire navigating the college search process. The last 7 years, I have been involved with bringing down the cost of colleges. This webinar is an overview of the entire process. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them underneath the chat bar, and we'll get to those at the end of the presentation. We will also be offering a complimentary consultation for anybody who is participating. So, let's discuss what we're going to be talking about tonight. Topics covered: college debt, making colleges more affordable, financial aid formulas, expected family contribution. You're going to be hearing a lot about the EFC. We're going to be talking about the FAFSA, the CSS profile, the net price calculator, how to capture private scholarships, how to appeal financial aid awards, increasing your admission chances, the hazards of reach schools, showing the college some love, and geographic hook. Now, I know this is a lot of information. Each one of these topics, we could do a full presentation. The whole point of this is to share valuable information with you, and hopefully you'll get information out of this and proceed to the next step. Currently, students in the United States have over $1.5 trillion in debt. The average student has a $33 million debt. Now, in public schools, 41% graduate in 4 years, and 60% graduate in 6 years. In private schools, it is about 10% higher than that. Now, the rise of student tuition, even on college campuses, when students are within their years, they are protesting. At NYU for the last 4 years, the first day of school, they are letting the first-year students know that they think that they're paying an outrageous fee. The only problem is that they should have received the information that I'm giving you 4 years prior. So, it's not what the college costs. It's what the college cost you. And also how many years you're spending getting that college degree. The plane. Why do I have a picture of a plane here? Colleges essentially price themselves like airline tickets. You could get a different price if you book the ticket 11 o'clock tonight as opposed to tomorrow morning. So colleges price themselves like this, and they could be just as mysterious. The prices families pay can vary significantly. It's not always the brightest student or the most financially needy student who receives the biggest awards. Equally smart students, families with the exact same incomes, with the exact same equity in their homes. One may be paying the full fare, the full tuition, and the other enjoys a special price. This is a quote from the author of Paying for College Without Going Broke. Higher education in America is a big business. The college is trying to get you to pay the most money. You are trying to pay the least amount. It can be very costly to assume that the college is going to show you how to get the most aid. Right now, these are the most expensive colleges in the country. 5 years ago, when I presented this workshop, people were amazed that they went into the 60,000. Now colleges are fast approaching, they are within the $70,000 figure. And by the time your sons and daughters graduate, it'll probably be in the, I'm sure it will be in the $80,000 figure. So let's take a look at the largest source of where the money comes from. It's important to understand where the money comes from. Federal, the three biggest are the federal government, the colleges themselves, and the state governments. The federal government. Household income is what makes or breaks a family's chance for federal help. The big daddy of federal money is called the Pell Grant. The maximum that one could receive from the Pell Grant is $6,345. But to qualify for the federal money, your family has to be struggling. The people who qualify for the full $6,345 have to have an adjusted gross income of $30,000 and less. One only gets the Pell Grant if their AGI is up to $60,000. But even if you don't qualify, you will be eligible for federal college loans, which are probably the best loans to get. And in order to get those loans, one needs to fill out the FAFSA, which we'll be talking about in a little bit. I want to talk about private scholarships. Even though private scholarships are a small chunk of the total pie, it's still valuable to apply for them. This is my daughter who graduated high school 6 years ago. On the night of the senior presentations, she received $8,000 in private scholarships. My daughter was maybe in the 25th percentile. So how is it that she could get $8,000 of private scholarships? She applied for them. She set aside time every week. She researched. We have a database of every scholarship in the country. And these are scholarships that the school offered. So she applied for them and she received them, including a $2,500 scholarship with the American Red Cross. So, how is it determined who gets what scholarships? The financial aid formulas play a huge role in all of this. Now, what are the financial aid formulas? The FAFSA, the CSS profile, and you'll enjoy a greater chance of cutting the cost of college if you understand how colleges price their bachelor degrees and also the financial aid formulas. FAFSA stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. It is a form that allows families to apply for federal loans, grants, and work-study programs. We talked about the Pell Grant. The FAFSA calculates your eligibility based on financial need with respect to the estimated cost of attendance and family contribution. The FAFSA determines your EFC, your expected family contribution. The FAFSA needs to be filled out each year. And even if you don't, and most parents and families do not qualify for need-based aid, you need to fill out the FAFSA. This is the gateway for the rest of the monies. So let's talk about a term that you'll hear a lot about, the expected family contribution. That's the EFC, and they come up with your expected family contribution by your family's yearly income, your taxable assets, the number of children in college at once, age of the oldest parent, and marital status of the student's parents. Your EFC is the minimum amount the student is expected to contribute towards the cost of college. This is an overall reference guide to what your expected family contribution would be. And as you could see, it is quite high. So if you make $30,000 or less, your expected family contribution is 0. And as you make more, it goes up. So if you make $100,000, you will be expected to pay $16,907. 150, $32,000. 200, $47,000. And if you make more than 250, it goes up to over 60,000. Now, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York get penalized more than any other state. My brother lives in a home 3 times as big as I do, but he paid 1/3 of the cost, as well as 1/4 of the taxes that I get paid. New Jersey is taxed more when they decide what your EFC is. So the middle class has to pay the most amount of money to school and receiving the least benefit, unless you know how to get those monies. The cost of attendance, taking away the expected family contribution, leaves you with a demonstrated financial need. So let's say the school costs $70,000. You have, if your expected family contribution is 50, then your demonstrated financial need is just 20. And that doesn't mean that the college is going to give you that. Every college is different. That's the reason why it's important to do research on the colleges, because some give a lot more than others. They also give you a lot of loans, which covers your need. The form which most people fill out for private schools is called the CSS profile. It's an application that universities use to determine how much non-federal financial aid you need. There are over 300 colleges that use the CSS profile. It's much more extensive than the FAFSA. They ask you everything about your personal income, your assets, how many cars you have. And this figure can qualify students for non-federal financial aid funded by the colleges. Now, this is a great tool if you have not heard of it. This is called the net price calculator. Net price calculators provide a personal estimate of what a family will pay for 1 year in college. The cost of school minus scholarships and grants will determine the net price. Every school in the country is required to have a net price calculator. You go to their website underneath the financial section, and there'll be a net price calculator. Schools determine the net price, the formulas that they use differently. There is not one particular way that it's determined, but this is a fabulous way to research the schools beforehand so you could get an idea based on your financial assets, how much you would pay for each school. College grants and scholarship. The average tuition discount at private schools is 51%. So there's the sticker price, and then they discount. Private schools must compete with the less expensive state schools. They use these grants to compete amongst themselves for attractive students. And the thought process is the more expensive a college is, the better. Colleges will raise their tuition and then discount. So when your son and daughter goes to a college, there'll be students who pay full price and students who get a full ride. It all depends, the research that you do, and the more information you have, the less that you will spend. The US and News and World Report, this is the Bible of college rankings. Colleges want to be listed higher in these rankings. Why? Very simply, the higher they are ranked, the more applications that they receive. So it's to their benefit to be ranked higher. What goes into ranking? A big portion of that is what the average score is of the SAT or ACT. Now, who receives merit money by SAT score? First, let's talk about the SAT. Today, Harvard decided to go test optional. More and more schools every day are going test optional. Why? Nobody's been able to take the SAT and ACT. I proctor 16, all of the SATs and the ACTs. We haven't been able to give them, as well as 95% of the schools in the country. So the schools are going test optional. But when it is time in the fall or the end of the summer for the SAT and ACT to take them, I would strongly urge you to take these tests. The SAT and ACT has flaws. no doubt about it, but so does a student's GPA. I worked at 3 public high schools in New Jersey, within 15 miles of each other. English 11 at one school is different from English 11 at another school. You could say the same thing for every single class. And I believe that the ACT and the SAT are the best way to compare students from one school in New Jersey to another, to a student in Hawaii, to Wyoming. And that's the reason why the SAT has been around for so long. And the truth is that when your student is a junior in high school, that is most schools, colleges are just going to see your students' grades, their freshman, sophomore, and junior. So this is the biggest opportunity to have an impact on what the colleges will see. And if you look at this diagram, the higher your score is, the more money that you'll receive. Very important to point out though, if you apply, let's say you get a fabulous score of 1400. If you apply to a school where the average is 1400, then you will not get much in merit money. Colleges give merit money if your score is above their score. Let's look at out-of-state merit aid. Schools that cut prices for top non-residents. You could see the list here: University of Colorado, Arizona, Washington, Indiana University. The list goes on and on. They want students from all over the country, and they're willing to give money for that. After everything is done, after you receive your award, you could always appeal your award. What the financial aid formulas try to do is put everyone in square boxes, pin it to a grid and say, this is how much money you need to go to college. So what the appeals process does is it allows the families to explain why they're not square. Don't assume that the college's first financial offer is the final one. You pinpoint a school's appeals process. You find out how they want you to appeal. If something changes in your employment status, in your family, and one which I find works more than you would think is leveraging. I always urge students to apply to a school where a similar school that they would like to go to, where they could get a lot of financial aid. And then you say to the school that my son or daughter or I would like, your school is my top choice, but because of the financial situation, this school is offering me, as you could see, a very large sum of money. And would you be willing to maybe give us a little bit extra? And more than not, they will be willing to do so. Increasing admissions odds. Boosting your chances. Solid academic fits, which are more likely to award merit money. Looking beyond your geographic region. How to use Naviance the best to your ability. You're more likely to win greater awards from colleges if you apply strategically to colleges. We'll also talk about the hazard of reach schools and showing your interest in a school. First, the hazards with REACH schools. Almost every guidance department, they will tell you to apply to REACH schools. The only problem with that, financially speaking, is if you need money, you will not receive any money if you get accepted into the REACH school. There's no reason why they should give you money if you apply to a REACH school beyond where you fit in. Basically, there are two sets of colleges that we're looking at, or three sets. You hear statistics all the time about there being 4,000 colleges in the country. It's true. But for argument's sake, let's say there's 500 great colleges out there. You have the most competitive schools, which are the Ivies, the ones that you see in front of you, and about 20 to 30 other schools, which is extremely difficult to get into. Among the elite private schools, tuition is driven by what the market will bear. It's that simple. They charge a higher tuition because they can. This is by FIST of the FIST Guide to Colleges. So when you apply to Ivy League schools and the top 20 to 30 most competitive schools in the country, it is a different approach than the most competitive, the competitive schools. So it's two-tier over here. If you apply to an Ivy League school, you have to have obviously the best GPA, the highest SATs, as many APs as you could get, and so many more things which would enable you to apply. The trick is to set you apart from the other students, and that's one of the things that we do, to see what is the best way, what is your niche to fit into or try to get into the schools. I would never urge anyone to apply to just an Ivy League school. I've seen too many students apply to just Ivy League schools because they think that they'll get in. And then they get rejected by all of them. And they go to a school they really don't like, where they could have gone to the most competitive schools or highly competitive schools and gotten full tuition or very good merit awards. Take a look at the rates here. This is where students get stressed out the most for obvious reasons. The acceptance rate is all below 10%. Cornell, which has more students than the other colleges, is 10.6. Then these schools underneath regular admissions is very low. The next chart, early decision and early action. Brown, 18% of their acceptances are early decision. As you could see, this is probably when people ask, well, should they apply early decision? If you are applying to an Ivy League school, yes, then you should apply early decision. You could see with the last column that the percentage of this incoming year for Brown from early decisions is 46%. At Penn, it's 53%. So in the case of the Ivy Leagues and the top competitive schools in the country, yes, it's definitely worth it to apply early decision. I wouldn't say so for the other schools because there's no reason if you get accepted to a most competitive school, to a competitive school. There's no reason, if you apply early decision, you have to go there. And there's no reason why they should turn around and then give you money. So let's look where the values are. Here in the New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania area, most students go to school on the East Coast, a few on the West Coast, and hardly anyone goes in the middle. If we were to look at high schools in California, most students go to schools in California, Washington, Arizona. And this applies to almost every high school. This is Livingston. But I looked at Chatham high schools today. It is exactly the same. New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, and Florida is where most of the students go to college. And then there's very few schools in between the East Coast and the West Coast. They want you. The money that you save, your son and daughter could fly home every month. Let's look at Naviance. Naviance, which almost every school has now, has taken the complete mystery out of college selection. Naviance, you could see where a student John Doe, that's where it'll have a little diagram for your son and daughter. It'll have the average GPAs of students and the average SAT score. I could predict with 99% accuracy if your son and daughter will get into a particular school. You remember what I said, the Ivy Leagues is certainly, and if you want to apply to the Ivy Leagues, go for it. But just remember, it is totally a different standard than the other schools. If you look at this diagram, if you're anywhere near the ballpark of average GPAs or average SATs, if you're below in one area or the other by 10%, the overwhelmingly possibility is that the school will accept you. Now, why is that? People hear how stressful everything is, the whole college process. But let's take a moment to look at the Common Application. The Common Application started 11 years ago. Up until that point, as a guidance counselor, it would take me approximately 30 minutes for each application to process. With the Common Application, I could process 25 or more in 5 minutes. So when you hear that there are so many more students applying to colleges, that's not the case. It's the same students who are applying to more and more colleges. So what does that mean? At Rutgers, in order to get their 6,000 students every year, they needed to admit 3 times that amount to enroll the 6,000 students. College of New Jersey, which is the most competitive public school in New Jersey, has to admit 4,000, 1 out of every 4, to get what they want in terms of their enrollment. Montclair, 1 out of 6. And it goes on. These are the three out of the 4, including Penn State, schools that students in New Jersey apply to. It's the same thing. For Delaware, 1 out of every 3.5 students. In Binghamton, 1 out of 5. And Maryland, 1 out of 4. The students who do not get accepted into these schools, the reason why they don't get accepted is because this is a reach for those students. If you're anywhere near the ballpark, they will accept you, since more and more students are applying to more and more colleges. You have to show the college some love, especially with the most competitive schools. Attend their meetings when you're a sophomore or a junior, when the school counselor comes to your school. The admissions people go to 3 to 4 schools a day. It's a high stress job. Very, very few students ever send them a thank you note. It makes a difference. Show that you're interested in school by visiting the school. You have to show if there are equally candidates, how you stand out from the others. The point is that you are in control of the process. I keep going back to 2 types of schools. Yes, you need to focus on a separate set of skills for the most competitive schools. It can be done, absolutely. You just have to realize that the odds are not in your favor, and to make your application stand out as much as possible. And in terms of money from the schools, there is money there if you apply to the schools strategically. It's been my pleasure. Sorry, I apologize for the beginning, the late start, but it's my pleasure on behalf of Embrace Tutoring and Educational Services to do this webinar. As you know, Embrace deals with tutoring, test prep, diagnostic testing, writing and essay support, and college counseling. We could help you in every aspect of college counseling, from the most competitive to the competitive schools. And if you're a middle-class parent, and when I say middle class, up to 500,000 or 600,000, there is no reason why you need to go into debt. Most people do not start thinking about the cost of college until after they get their first bill. I hope you got something out of this webinar. It's been a pleasure for me to do it. If you have any questions, I'm going to see if there's any questions here that's listed. Otherwise, feel free to have a complimentary session with myself. Just contact, there should be a link here, or contact Embrace Tutoring. So thank you for your participation. Now let me check to see if there's any questions.